The Borderlands games seem like they're stuck in this virtual arms race where with each of the sequels, reboots, DLCs, they just keep trying to add in a lot more guns, to the point in which some of the trailers straight up say that they have billions of different ways to kill their wacky enemies. They're constantly trying to cram in more jokes, more special abilities, more craziness. But now, with their newest game, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, I feel like we finally hit the wall. I can't quite care anymore. But that doesn't mean that this game is completely bad. Let's talk about that. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and this is my brutally honest review. Now, first and foremost, let's talk about the very peculiar setup and why this game doesn't even really exist inside of the Borderlands universe. You see, this is a series that's all about space travel, but it's almost like a Western. Everybody's stuck on desert planets. Everybody's constantly just trying to hunt for infinite loot, crazy weapons, or invaluable treasure. Well, in this game, it's just a couple characters who have crash-landed their ship on an ancient alien planet, and now they're waiting to be rescued. While they're sitting there, they've decided to play a board game, which is essentially a crazy version of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, because of this very unique setting, they've basically given themselves infinite access to whatever style of gameplay they want, because when you consider it, we're now playing inside of a fictional universe that exists inside another fictional universe. Now, the reason this works is because I think that when Borderlands is the most funny, because this definitely wants to be a humorous first-person shooter, when it's making me laugh the hardest is when they're just completely going off the rails, making me fight giant dragons or talking about Queen Butt Stallion. But I feel like a lot of the jokes here feel very, very forced. I want to talk more about the story in a bit, but let's begin with what's most important in this game, which is definitely the gameplay itself. The combat in Tiny Tina is absolutely superb. This is just so well balanced. I feel like a lot of people sort of forget the fact that Borderlands 3, even if you completely hated the rather cringy story it tried to tell at times, Borderlands 3 had some of the best looting and shooting mechanics that have ever been created. The fact that it just constantly is generating randomized guns, it works exceptionally well. Well, those mechanics have been carried into Wonderlands. Basically, the way this works is that there is these very structured dungeon sequences, times where you're trying to invade a burning city or trying to go into a necromancer's crypt, and during the course of this, every enemy you kill has a chance to drop new, completely devised, instantly generated weapons. Now, this can be stuff like axes that are going to drink the blood of your enemies and thus restore your health, magic, spells, fires you can sling, or even things like shotguns and sniper rifles. And all of this is incredibly fun because of the randomized nature of it. There is literally billions of different styles of gun that can be made up. Now, the thing here is that as these keep advancing, as these keep getting better, I felt like there is a fantastic amount of crazy power creep. I kept getting exponentially stronger. I kept getting deeper into the customization. This is one of those games that makes it where every single item that drops is exciting. Every single time, even 15 hours into this, I was delving into some of the in-game chaos chamber dungeons, which I want to talk about, but even then, you're still getting another like belt or chest piece or ring and just being like, oh my god, this is going to boost the heck out of my stats. Now, this does feel more like Dungeons and Dragons than the other games did. The stats are things like increased armor, extra health, extra damage, and also things like luck, which increase basically the more good loot you're going to get in the future. Now, I do want to talk a bit about the specialization trees. Now, this is something that's a little bit strange, but I think is going to be the aspect that keeps people playing the longest. The way this works is that there are hero classes in a typical Dungeons and Dragons sense. These are basically things like the Stabomancer, which is like basically a rogue who does extra stealth damage. There's a warlock style guy who does evil magic. There's classes that can summon minions. Now, when you choose these, they give you access to very different skill trees, which are very, very, very complex. The classes, even if everybody is using the same guns and firing the same styles of arsenal, these talent trees very deeply change the nature of how everybody is going to play. Now, I like this, but I do think that it's one of those games that has a very steep learning curve. You can beat everything just by pulling the trigger and getting some headshots, but if you want to be good at this, if you want to actually unlock and see the depths of this gameplay, you're going to have to do a lot of tinkering and experimenting and probably watch some YouTube videos to really explain what the heck is going on. Now, personally, I kind of dig that. I kind of appreciate a game that has so much depth and intricacy that you can't just instantly know every aspect of it, especially because about halfway through the game, they give you a second class. You can be basically a dual spec and be two separate specializations simultaneously. Now, I think this is neat, and it makes it where if you're somebody that does not want to play this online, if you are planning on playing it completely by yourself, you can be like two separate pet classes and have double the minions chasing you into combat. I think it's interesting that they decided to make such a deep, customizable system of gameplay, so you can just focus on the guns you like the most, the playstyle you like the most, or the magic you like the most. But that does bring me to the Chaos Chambers. Now, I don't want to talk too in-depth about this because I do feel like it's a little bit spoilerly, but there is finally a true end-game experience. One of the problems I've had with Borderlands in the past is that it felt like you were just supposed to play through the game again and again and again. Typically, when I beat the last boss and finished doing all the side quests, I'd either quit the game or restart it with a different class. Well, here, they have a proper end-game sequence called Chaos Chambers, which are basically extra difficult escalating dungeons that do give you some fun, extra challenges that, in my opinion, make it worth really specializing your character properly. I dig that, and I feel like it respects the player base, especially if you plan on playing this co-op very, very intensely. But I want to talk more about my gripes with this, because honestly, the biggest problem with Tiny Tina Wonderlands is that it doesn't really matter. As much fun as this game is, in the grander context, this does feel like overpriced downloadable content. And the reason I say that is because even within the context of this universe, it's just so forced. It feels like these characters are never going to come back. There's no actual effort. There's no real cost. I feel like this game is just so boring, and part of it just comes down to the fact that the characters themselves, during their voice acting, sound incredibly out of it. A lot of the lines, the dialogue, so much of these jokes are so painfully bad that even the people reading them don't expect you to laugh. So much of the comedy here feels like it's based on the idea of just endlessly rambling. Characters never shut up. They just keep talking about, oh, we're going to go on an adventure. Oops, I dropped a Cheeto. Oh, let's go on another quest with the Queen of the Butt Stallions. Okay, that's fine, but now I feel like comedy has very much shifted in the last couple years. We exist in the Rick and Morty time period now. Now, I am a giant fan of Rick and Morty, but I feel like everybody is trying to copy Rick and Morty without understanding what makes it funny. People are just trying to take that idea of, oh, it's whimsical friends on a whimsical adventure being incredibly whimsical. But the problem is that here, it just doesn't stick. The bad guy does not really care. The characters don't really care. Like, everybody sounds so dry and uninterested that even when you are fighting off legions of the undead or exploding skeletons or battling dragons, even then the characters are just like, oh great, another adventure. And the problem with that is that at times I feel like the world itself actually is great. One of the interesting mechanics they've devised for this is a overworld map. Basically, it's like classic Final Fantasy. Instead of just selecting a dungeon or, just flying to a dungeon, the game has these series of set pieces. And in order to get to them, you have to walk across an overworld map where basically your character has a slightly big head and you're walking across these tiny cities and stuff. This gives you a chance to do randomized battles to level up, pick up side quests, talk to characters, and most importantly, I think it really establishes the ridiculous fictional setting of this. You'll see like a spilling gigantic can of soda sitting there making a river, or huge snack food that's fallen in this fictional world. This idea of just extremely self-aware humor is functional, and I appreciate what they're attempting to do, but it just never quite lands. It does at times feel a little bit disconnected, because no matter how much loot I get, no matter how much fun I have, I do feel like once the next game comes out, this is never going to get seen or talked about again. I don't care about these people's struggles. I don't care about the side quests of people that are being killed by the evil king. Like, none of this really matters. All these cities that burn, there's like such a weird disconnect to this. Like, I wish that this was connected to Borderlands 3 or, I don't know, something like that. I wish that this had some sort of connection to the grander context instead of just another pointless drop in the endless pointless bucket. The guns are fun, the magic is great, killing people feels good, but at the end of the day, even if you beat this game, you're probably not going to remember it. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go over the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Tiny Tina's Wonderlands a 7.5 out of 10. Thank you specifically so much for watching this video and for leaving a comment and leaving a like and all that. You guys absolutely rock, and seriously, I appreciate just the fact that I get a chance to talk about such weird projects. This game is so satirical, it's so self-referential, and the fact that it has so many guns, it was at least interesting to rip into what's so good and so wrong about it. You guys rock, I love you very much, thank you for subscribing, but please do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. Oh man, so many guns. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.